not working.
It's true. I'm ready for it. You just like from our mouth to Hashem's ears, and then we'll do it. No, but I was thinking Tuesdays is good. Tuesdays is a good day, so try to plan your summer schedules around that. Tuesday morning. I'll talk. Well, you're having a baby, so
That could still come during the summer.
of course, bring your baby. You know that we'll have babysitting.
Right after, so I still have the whole summer.
Oh, okay, fine. Okay, you're gonna be around on Tuesday.
Yeah.
Do we know the gender? Like, it was a whole surprise.
Oh, I know. She's like, Chloe, hi everybody, welcome.
The whole Instagram knows. Baby. Nice.
We're going to tackle chapter 8 today. Somebody asked me to say in the beginning if we could do Perek. Oh, no, Sarah's not here. Can I borrow your phone or no? Do you need it? I don't know. Sarah, where are you? We need you. Somebody okay.
Like what to do?
Just voice memo. Yeah.
How do you do it?
You're like my mother.
Yeah.
Hold on 1 second. Here we go. Continue. Your moms never use it.
No.
You don't need it to track it. Okay, perfect. Okay. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining. Thank you for being here. Thursday night, nice and calm. We don't have any teens running around here. No teen Tanya. Somebody actually asked me by tag last night. They had a mother-daughter event. So somebody like straight up asked me, one of Vina's friends, I heard girls come Thursday night for Tanya. And I'm like, yeah, they jump around and they play and they have fun. Hi.
Yes,
welcome. Are you new here?
I never came in person, but I always listen to it live.
Oh my gosh, that's so cute. What's your name?
Eliana Sunimi.
Oh, okay. Hi. Okay. Yes. Hi. How are you? What? We're on. It's fine. We're rolling. Welcome, Alana. She gets a shout out. Now you get to get the in-person joke. Happens to be last week. Wait, who was here last week? I forgot to answer a very important question, so I think we'll start off with that, okay? So we'll get started. Welcome everybody. Happy Thursday night. Getting ready for Shavuos. And now, by the way, now that I started doing the playlist, thank you, Malki. No, for real, I do it. I'm after Lag BaOmer, I am going to start Sivan already. So I'm already in Sivan mode, because I know it's still the end of the Yantif, but and it becomes, by the way, the month becomes more concentrated as the month goes on. But I always feel post a full moon, once it starts getting smaller and smaller, I'm okay, we could start prep. So, right. Also, after Lag BaOmer, I said something, I was talking to one of my kids after, it was 1 night ago, 2 nights ago, and I was like, oh, let's say the Omer. And she was like, wait, isn't it over? After Lag BaOmer? I'm like, no. We are still counting till Shavuos. Sometimes these things get confusing, between, everything that we're
I saw someone online, an Israeli influencer who's, not really so religious, and he's, I guess he's growing spirit. He's, posted online, oh, the Omer's over, so I'm
take it off. And I'm no, not yet. Right. Okay. So one of the biggest questions that we had from Perek Zion, and I think this is probably one of my biggest questions, is always what's the limit? At what point do you say that everything is klipas noga and everything is for Hashem, and it could go to a degree where it's sometimes unhealthy. So at what point, what's the barometer for saying, okay, this, you figure you're carrying, you're taking it a little bit too far. So, there's a story about the Baal Shem Tov, and this, Shais Hav said this story, and I actually think that this will kind of keep us in check, it's the type of story, you're not going to forget. He was talking about this yid that was in a shul, and it was Friday night, and he was sitting down at the table, and he was eating, it was the time of the Baal Shem Tov, and he was eating cholent and kugel. Cholent, kugel, kishka, pastrami, whatever he was eating, and everybody was taking it as he was eating it. He was Kavat Shabbos Kodesh, Kavat Shabbos Kodesh, and he was feeling so, I'm elevating everything. And then the Baal Shem Tov came closer, and there was this idea where everybody put their arms around each other. I don't know what this means, but they would have an aliyah. They would go up. They would feel connected. They would be bringing, singing, and with their arms around each other, they were all singing. And as they were singing, everybody was looking at this cholent yid, and all they saw was an ox wearing a shtreimel. What was happening was an ox wearing a shtreimel. That this yid was I'm elevating everything, peeling off the klipas, eating it. No, he was just stuffing his face with cholent and kugel that happened to have been very oily and very good. When you see it, when in their ascent, in the with special eyes of the Baal Shem Tov, these Yidden were able to see that it wasn't authentic and it wasn't real. So I think that if we remember, keep in check, every time you're am I going too far? So always check your bank account before you like make some irrational decision. And B, recognize that you're doing this really for Hashem, authentically for Hashem, because it gets very, very tricky. You're like, everything's for Hashem, everything could be for Hashem. Yes, it's true, but there is a thermometer that you have to.
I think
you
the
have to
key
be in.
is checking yourself. If you're checking yourself, then you checking yourself.
Right.
If you're fake checking yourself, then you're not really checking
Right,
yourself.
right. If you're fake checking,
But that's
right?
the key. Always checking in with yourself. Where am I?
Right.
Does this feel right? Is this the right thing?
Right. In all areas, right. Right, we have to. So it's important to
The
like
people
remember
who
that.
just do it like that, they're not really checking. They're
not really.
There's no checking. It's just
Right.
rationalizing. It's just doing.
Right, rationalizing, right? He always talks about that, Chase Taub. Like, rationalizing is just taking a lie and figuring out how to make sense of it. Oh, yeah, there are still more chairs here, sorry, or they're also in the kitchen. Okay, so the way that we ended off, Parak Zayin. Well, okay, so we were almost at the end. I'm not going to discuss everything in Parak Zayin, I'll be honest. Like, I feel like I did all my share talking about, like, when we're talking about like having intention, so what we took out is that everything has to have intention, and with the intention, you're able to peel off klippas. Klippas noga are easier, and then we said there's another type of klippa. There were two types of klippas. One was klippas noga, and the other one was shos klippas timeos, right? The three irredeemable klippas. So we have redeemable klippas, which are klippas noga. Irredeemable klippas are what? What are examples of irredeemable klippas that we gave? Treif, not kosher, relationships that we're not allowed to have, right? Anything that when we very clearly define the difference between usher, right? Well, something that's usher versus something that's tied down. We explain that what does Hashem do? Hashem is not scared that we're going to steal things. That's why he ties it down. He ties it down because he's telling us that you don't have to go there. And when Mashiach comes, I will take care of that. Okay. Then we started talking a little bit about the concept of teshuvah, and we're going to talk about it a little bit more. This was probably one of the most interesting things that I discovered in Tanya. I know there's a lot of interesting fun things. Like I was talking to somebody today at lunch, whatever, and I was like, it's a klipa, and I'm just talking like everybody knows klipas, and she was like, what's a klipa? And I was like, oh my gosh, 8 months ago I didn't either know what a klipa was. So now this concept I happen to really, really love, and we started talking about it. We ended off a little bit last week about this. We were talking about how, let's say you did something wrong and you want to know if retroactively you can go back there. I know we always speak about this concept that the journey is part of it and all the hardships that you go through makes it, but what about redeeming things that you didn't know about before? Now you're at a certain point in your life and you're like, oh my gosh, I wish I knew, I would have redeemed that. Can I go back to that place? So let's say now I started having intent in my life. What about 10 years ago when I was living my life and I wasn't living it with intention and I wasn't living it with kavanah and I wasn't peeling off klippas? Is that all for naught? Is there a way of retroactively, as we're, let's say, and this we also gave ourselves chizuk, let's say I made a mistake and I didn't make a bracha with intention. And the food was kosher, but I didn't make a bracha with intention. In a minute, if I had intention, I could go back. And what is that when you go back? What is that called in Yiddishkeit?
It's guilt, no? It's not a Jewish concept to go back. We go forward. It's
we
like a
do.
pretzel. If you think about how you got into the twists and turns of a pretzel, you could be figuring it out for forever. But we always
so funny that you say that a pretzel. Does anybody know this book? It's called Bully Beans. It's a great book, and it talks about this kid who bullies, and he's puts people into human pretzels. I'm trying to remember how I feel on pretzel. But so here's the thing, not guilt. What's another word that we have in Yiddishkeit?
Guilt and shame are not purposeful.
Tshuva. It's tshuva. Tshuva is going back. Right.
That's what tshuva is.
Tshuva is. So getting stuck in the guilt part, we're not supposed
I
to.
will not be doing this.
Yeah, but you also have to reflect back.
to go back.
Right. So it is. So it's also to return, to come back to who you originally were. So what we do in this place of wanting to be able to go back to that time that I wasn't intentful, or I wasn't doing things right, or I made a mistake, or I didn't make a bracha, and I did things that. What we do is we do tshuva. So there's two types of tshuvas. This is kind of how we ended off last week. There's tshuva me'yira, and then there's tshuva me'ava. Tshuva me'yira is I am so scared, I really want to have a good year. Hashem, I'm so sorry. Hashem nu baganu, right? I know that good things are coming, but I need you to be in my a yira, a fearful way of an approach of doing it, and that takes all your averos and it wipes it clean. But then we know about this magical tshuva that is. Tshuva me'ava. What does that mean?
It comes from a place of love.
It comes from a place of love. Hashem, I love you. I want to just be closer to you. I can't believe I put myself in a place where I wasn't connected to you. And I want to become better. And that's what allows the irredeemable to be redeemed. It's something that maybe I couldn't have gotten to, but with tshuva, I'm able to go to it. So what we're going to do now is we're going to take it one step further. And I honestly, like, I'm telling you, like, this is something I was like, I cannot believe. I always heard this concept, but like, it's so cool to see it inside. So he says like this: Ach ad sheyaset tshuva gedola al kol shezdonos nasu lo zchuyos. That if you, like, this word of like chet, of like zonos, is like a real intentional, purposeful sin. Let's say I did something on purpose, I did something wrong. Tshuva can make that irredeemable, redeemable. I did something totally wrong. I don't know, I ate not kosher, right? And I did it on purpose. It's saying it right here, you did it on purpose. Tshuva me'ava, when you do real tshuva, it can actually take the klipas that you can never actually redeem, but now you can redeem it. Like this. Kosher is something you can't redeem. We just said there's shlosha klipos tmeos. There are things you cannot redeem, and Hashem says wait till the end. Let's say you find yourself in a place where you sunk very low, and you're actually eating a cheeseburger, whatever, something that's not kosher, and you fall into this place and you're like, oh my goodness, I can't believe I for 1 second disconnected from Hashem, disconnected from the person who created me, disconnected from the person who I love, and all I want to do is go back there. I start the process of tshuva me'ava, and then what happens is that thing that I did wrong propels me to an even higher place. So you happen to find yourself in a place that you didn't want to be. It's not something that we're supposed to do. But now that you were able to go higher, literally use it as like a trampoline to go higher, to connect closer to Hashem, those things that you did wrong, that you now make the irredeemable redeemable. Does this make sense? It's like not something that you planned on doing. Let's say, God forbid, somebody marries a non-Jew, right? And then they realize this is not the right thing. Then maybe the non-Jew converts, let's make a happy ending, and then they get remarried and have a new chuppah, right? That person at a certain point chose to marry a non-Jew, right? And it's not something that's allowed. It's not a relationship that's allowed. I now use that to become a better person. And don't for 1 second make this like an okay for us to like do it, because like, oh my gosh, now I'm going to go further.
No,
but
the whole thing is that it's retroactive.
The whole thing is, right.
That you go down to come back up, but you don't go down purposely to come back up.
Right. And this is where the Tanya quotes, and it's like one of my favorite Thank You Hashem songs, is B'makom shavai tshuva omdim ein tzadik gomer yachol la'amod. In a place where Baal Tshuva stands, a tzadik gomer can't stand. What does that mean? Based on what we just said.
Baal Tshuva is doing tshuva from Ava.
The Baal Tshuva is doing tshuva from Ava. He's able to get to a higher place because he was in the irredeemable zone, and he chose to take that irredeemable things and pull it out and bring it higher. So there is a concept that a Baal Tshuva is higher. Now, you don't have to think like, oh, I didn't grow up from, and now I'm a Baal Tshuva, oh my gosh, I'm better. No, as Yidden, who even are like FFBs, can become Baal Tshuvas. You can, but you always want to be. You want to be a Baal Tshuva. That's the idea, where you always want to take everything that you fell from and bring it up. So this is like, in Hasidus, we always learn like, dark places are very holy places. This is where you see it. You use it as a springboard to get you even closer to Hashem. You then have the ability to redeem the irredeemable. Okay? So, and that all comes from the Ukva Deliva Ba'ava, Rabba, with great love, depths of the heart, a craving soul. The way that he explains it, it's like somebody who's very thirsty for Hashem. It's like parched. And all he wants to do, he knows that the pain and the separation from Hashem is really, really hurtful. Okay. So now, we'll move on. So there's actually a part of Perek Zayin that talks all about, I don't feel like I need to go so much into it, about like wasting seed and the difference between wasting seed versus actually marrying a non-Jew and having a baby, and which one's worse and which one's not, and how to redeem it and how not to. But overall, what you should know is that, basically just wrapping this up, is that the Gemara really says that when you say the Shema intensely, and this is for men, obviously we're all women here, that you say very intensely, then it becomes like a double-edged sword for you to be able to redeem all the things that you like put out there, I guess. Okay, so he the way that Sheistav explained it, he said that like wasting seed is like even worse and like causes a lot. It causes a lot of spiritual pollution. But just like you don't have intent when you're doing things, let's say with a bracha, and you want to be able to pull it back, you could do the same thing. It's easily pulled back. Everything that we do wrong can be easily pulled back if it's under the category of klipa, snoga. So almost everything is klipas nova. There's very few things that you end up falling into with the irredeemable klipas, but if klipas nova, you can uplift it. Okay? Okay, fine. So that ends Parak Zayin. Now we're going to move to Parak Ches. Okay. So Parak Ches has some interesting topics. We definitely talk about like Gehenim in here. So it's funny because I was having this conversation with Paloma. She wasn't able to be here tonight, and she was like, somebody was listening to Tanya, and he's like, it's so scary. And she's like, there's no such thing as punishment in Tanya. And then I'm like, actually, there's like a teeny little tiny part. We'll talk about it tonight. And she's like, okay, fine, give me the cliff notes. Okay, we'll go over it. So, but it's like towards the end, and we'll wrap up the class on that. But like, don't get scared. But basically, there's like snow hell, and then there's like fire hell. And I'm like, oh my goodness, like, what is happening here? I got like very scared. And then I'm like, it's literally 2 lines. We'll go through it. We'll understand it. Don't be scared. Okay. So, Parak Ches is a continuation of Parak Zayin, and it literally starts that. It says V'od, and furthermore, it literally continues. So, also, by the way, at the end of this Parak, this is, remember when we were talking about in the beginning 1 through 8 is the lexicon of Tanya? So now that we look, after Parak 8, it starts to move into a little bit more practical. It like shifts after Parak Ches. Okay. So it says like this. Va'odos talks more. This is more about klipas noga and being able to peel it off and all the prohibited stuff and not. Okay, so it says va'odos b'machalas asuros shalakach nikraim b'shem iser. So he says even there's a reason why non-kosher foods are called asar. Asar, we said the way that we translate asar is chained down. Okay, it's not like bad guy, bad thing. It just means it's chained. So what if you found yourself in a place where you ate non-kosher food, not on purpose? Okay, Trader Joe's, for example. This is like the scariest thing. There are literally like kosher certificates from like Mumbai, from this one, San Juan. I'm like, oh my gosh, is this kosher? I'm like, CRC I know, COR I know, but like, what is this one, right? And you eat it, and somebody told you it was kosher, and on your Nishay chat, everybody said it was kosher, right? And you ate it. And then only later do you find out it's not kosher. So like what happens in that scenario? Okay, so remember, it's a permissible thing. We're eating, I mean, it's irredeemable, but it wasn't kosher. But guess what? I had intention. I made a bracha on it. I was sure it was positive. It was a hadama. I found out. It's hadama, I feel like it's hard to like not be kosher. But like, okay, mazonos, okay, fine. Or I don't even know. But I'm trying to think, like, what is like...
I bought nuts. There was like pistachios or something. Or not pistachios, I don't know, type of nut.
Like a
literally
fluted one.
eating it, and I'm like, oh my god, there's no extra.
Right, I know. It's like, it's very hard. Right, okay, so now we're going to learn how to deal with that. Okay, so, and you made a bracha on it, and you had intention. And when you ate it, you're like, this is going to give me kayach to be a better mommy today, so it's going to be so good. And then you find out it's not kosher, right? So like, what happens there? Okay, so the way that the Baal Tanya explains it is that he says you used it, not only did you have intention, but you said, I'm going to use the food, you used the food to study Torah and to daven, and you really wanted to uplift it. But what happens, because it's not kosher food, that kosher food doesn't get, that klipa in the food does not draw out, right? Remember we said that when you remove a klipas noga, it brings out a spark, it brings out the light from it. Here, you're not able to lift anything. It's still, because it's chained to the negative forces of the sitra achra, of the klipas tmeos, of the shalosh klipas tmeos. So the impurity of those klipas that are inside of that food, they don't bring a positive force to the world. They bring a negative force to the world. By the way, that spark that you release, it's not like, I mean, it's not, we don't see it, it's invisible, but it causes good into the world. It brings more good into the world. The more klipas you peel off, the more good comes into the world. So as you're recovered, don't worry. Hi, Sarah. Come, take a seltzer. So it remains chained to the negative forces, and it cannot be released. And by the way, even if it's kiderabanan, it's not just doraisa things. Even if derabanan, even if according to the Shulchan Aruch it says it's not kosher, you're like, yeah, but it's not doraisa. It's derabanan. Even derabanan also becomes chained. And by the way, like sometimes, and I'm not sure like where the source of this is, maybe I shouldn't say, but like I remember learning that like derabanan sometimes is even higher than doraisa, like in a way, because like it's something that we take on, just like how minhag is really the highest level. Rabbi Yossi talks about this concept that it's the highest. But even if it was derabanan, even if it's doraisa, you can't release those sparks from it. It doesn't come out from it. So what happens? So it's probably one of those kind of things that we have to wait for Mashiach to come. That's what we keep saying. Or till death do us part. And that's how we started talking about this a little bit last week, how like by a tahara, what happens at a tahara is that it like all the irredeemable stuff that got stuck with inside of you gets drawn out from you, gets taken out from you. Because imagine irredeemable klippas, what does it do? It's just blockages, right? It's husks, it's peels. So the more irredeemable things you consume, it makes you have a thicker shell, and that could be inside, and that could stop things from flowing. Think of it just from like a physical way, right? Certain foods like cause blockages in the arteries, right? Certain things that you do or you connect to, if they're irredeemable klippas, it causes blockages within you. Sometimes the more bad you do, the more, right? Like you start off just like not doing things with intention. You start off doing things by mistake, and then all of a sudden people are doing things on purpose, and you're like, how'd I get to that point? I'm not that kind of person. I'm not a bad person. But it happens gradually as you build up, because you build up like a tolerance for it. You're like, I can handle this. This is something I do. I could do this. But you know it's wrong, but somehow you find yourself keep doing it. Going back to Yaakov trauma, I remember like thinking like if you do it 3 times, then like you can't stop. Like it becomes, I don't know where that came from. I think it's like from Chot HaMashosh, Love and Mary to take, but like it's for the good thing, but somehow I interpreted it for the wrong thing. Okay. So now that we've established that both like Doraisa and Rabbanan irredeemable or forbidden activities are really powered by these klippas. So these 3 irredeemable klippas, they have a koyach, they have a strength, and when you engage in them accidentally or sometimes even on purpose, it builds up something within you. Your animal soul starts to get stronger. Your animal soul feeds off of these things, right? So it becomes stronger. You are what you eat, right? 100%. 100%. Like when I talk about kosher, when I learn with like my girls in the city and we always talk about kosher, I always start off let's see if this works. Sorry about that. I always start off like with kosher being like you are what you eat, and that the things that you consume become part of you, right? So like not kosher animals, we only eat the farm animals. We eat the petting zoo animals. We don't eat the wild safari animals because it becomes part of you. It does. Like we eat the kind birds. We don't eat the mean birds. We don't eat vultures. We don't eat birds that are not nice to others. So it does become part of you. So even though it's a chok and we don't fully understand it, you can understand it a little bit. Okay. So what happens is v'lachein gam haYetzer hara v'koach hamisada l'dvarim ha'asurim. Therefore, the Yetzer hara and the desire for forbidden, it doesn't come from something sparkly from Klipas Noga. It comes from a very dark place. So now, I don't know if any of you are into like Stranger Things or like that's like, obviously there's a clip on it and it's not Jewish things, but it's like a sci-fi and there's like, I know some people are like very freaked out by it. Like I had this like sci-fi thing inside of me from like when I was a kid. But basically in the show there's this concept of like demons and like demagogues. Like I don't know. Anybody here? No? Nobody knows what I'm talking about. Okay. I happen to believe that we should do a class on it once because it's a lot of Jewish concepts and it talks about the other side. It's basically the dark side. The other side is like Sitra Achra. It really is. Like it's very, like I didn't even realize how much it was. But anyway, there's this concept where there's like these bad guys, these demons, these demagogues, and like scary. So here is where the Baal Tanya starts to talk about this concept of a Shindalit. I don't know if you're not allowed to say the name like during the day, right?
That's trauma.
That's trauma. Yes. The story with the girl in the window. Come on, everybody heard that story, right? Like when we were kids, right? Okay, so Shindalit, I guess even I feel like now you're not even supposed to say it, but it's like a window shade, right? Okay, fine, that's the word. The klipa that builds up this other irredeemable klipa. What he says is that the way that he describes it. What?
What? No, Robot Charles doesn't know.
Oh.
She was not taught this.
Okay, I'll explain to you in 1 minute. Hold on 1 second. So he says, where does this come from? He says, one of the...
We don't talk
You don't talk scary things, no. Okay, he says, therefore, the Yetzer hara, which is Sitra Achra, the Yetzer hara, which is your impulse to do evil, and the desire for forbidden things, does not originate from the animal soul of Klipas Noga, but from an external influence, namely, Vehu Shade Hamashtin Nucharian, that he's one of the foreign demons, okay, which has the energy of the Yetzer hara, of the wicked nations of the world, and those are the 3 Klipas. Basically, he's saying that when you have this drive to do something wrong, okay? Like, something that's like okay to do wrong. Like, it's not a bad thing. Let's say to overeat, right? This is like my mother, there used to be like this commercial like years ago from like Alka-Seltzer that be like, it like helps you with like after you eat, right? And the whole line was like, I can't believe I ate the whole thing. That was like their line. And anytime like we overeat in our family, my mother's always like, I can't believe I ate the whole thing. That's not a good thing. You're not supposed to stuff your face. You're supposed to eat, right? We don't want to be oxes with strangles on top, right? We want to be eating and to enjoy. But there is a feeling that sometimes when you eat, and eating is allowed, and you're supposed to uplift all the food. But when you eat too much and you know it, it's not so good. But that's not coming from a terrible place. That's not coming from a bad thing. That's just coming from the way that you were programmed, the way that we are. We are human beings. We are people who need to be fed. We need calories. We need energy. We need, right? But when you eat too much, it's not such a bad thing, but it's something that you can pull back from. If you find yourself that you have a taiva for something that's irredeemable or not kosher or a relationship that's not okay, that's coming from a very foreign place. That's coming from a place of shendalid. That's not programmed into you. You don't have that in part of you. And if you find yourself desiring things that you're not supposed to desire, you have to check in with yourself and be like, wait, what happened? Did I ingest too many klipas? Like, did I do too many things wrong? It's a time for you to check in with yourself and say, what does this mean? This is not normal. This is not the normal setting of a human being to feel these drives for it. And you should know that if you do have those drives, then it's because it's coming from a foreign place. It's coming from this place of
A lot
Shabbat.
of it is from trauma. So is that similar?
Interesting.
That's
Oh, that's so interesting.
Like, is it because you're like seeking something or like because of something that you had? So
something that happened to a person will cause them to. It's an addiction world. That's how addiction works.
right. So it happens to be, I was listening to Gedalia Fenster. He did a podcast with Joey Rosenfeld. I don't know if anybody heard it. It's like phenomenal. Like basically it's okay to not be okay. And Rip Joey, right? Rosenfeld, he's an addictions counselor, and he was talking about the whole concept of like addiction, and it is very much in line with this. So it could be that the trauma is that foreign thing, but it's like a foreign entity. That's the way he was explaining it. It's a foreign.
Sometimes it's like handed down, but sometimes it's usually something that someone did to someone, usually as a younger person. But
100%, because it says it over here that it can be referred to as damage.
It's an outside force,
right?
That
It's not
an outside negative force.
It's like he said. There's like a damage. It's like a damage inside of you. That's what trauma is. So trauma. So how do you identify it? If Hashem says it's something that you're not allowed to have, then you have to stay away from it. But if you find yourself going towards the things that Hashem says that you can have, you have to try to check within yourself what happened to you, because it's not our natural programming. The way the Baal Tanya says it's okay to feel lust for things that you're allowed to have, to overeat.
So the lust would be like the Yitzhar, and then doing it is like just not in.
So no.
What part of it is not in
With klipas noga, let's say like overeating, right? You're allowed to eat. It's kosher food. It's healthy kosher food. Maybe not so healthy. You eat too much. Am I a terrible person? No, it's something that I can just easily flip back and be like, okay, that wasn't good for me.
If something is damaging, it's like Rabbi Jacobson always says, that's how you deal with someone who either has an addiction or is in extreme pain and non-functional or whatever
you say it's an outside force.
You say what happened to you, not like straight out what happened to, but in your head, what happened to this person that is causing them to behave like this.
Right. You have to go back into
force.
Right.
It's not. People are not naturally programmed to deconstruct.
Right. We don't want to deconstruct. We don't want to go into a place.
How are you able to
identify
which is just like programmed in like?
So what's if it's irredeemable? It's not in your. It's not programmed in with you.
If it's irredeemable.
Okay, if it's redeemable.
If it's redeemable.
If it's redeemable, then yes. Because think about so many things that are redeemable that you can go over the edge with. Let's say food, relationships, right? Remember we spoke about it. Like even
it's not necessarily redeemable. Forbidden
relationships are not. But let's say regular healthy marital relationships. We said that if you don't have intent, even during that time, you could have gone to the mikvah, you could have everything was perfect, but without proper intent, that's also overgoing it. But you can always go back to that. Here we're talking about things that are totally irredeemable, not kosher, relationships that you can't have, things that Hashem tells us not to do, shotness. Ooh, I'm such a taiva to where you go boss with shotness when you are, that means that there's something wrong. There's something went wrong in your programming, and you have to figure out what it is. So like we could say trauma. Here he says damage. Like some damage happened that you kind of crossed over into this world where you want to do it. Where does that come from? It comes from the side of Shindal. It comes from something foreign.
Isn't
It
that
comes from something.
like
What? So yes, by the way, when you say a ruach shtas, nobody really actually wants to sin. I love that. Thank you. Right. How does it start again? The pasuk, it might be in here, right?
It's like been a while since I
Right, like where we say that nobody sins unless a ruach shtas comes into them and takes them over. Yes, that's exactly what it is. It's something from outside that's just like, ooh, scary. So like, for the Stranger Things fans, it's like, I'm trying to peel off the clippers from Stranger Things. I'm pretty sure there's like a Jewish writer in there, and like two of the actors are Jewish. But basically, it's like scary things, like, ooh, it's something very scary. No, it's just something that it's from this side of Shadal. We don't go there. Okay, so he says that these demons, right? The Jewish demons are klipas noga, but the other ones, the pleasures. Let's say like we can have pleasure-seeking things that we want to do that are allowed, but this is something totally different. This is the opposite. Nevertheless, before it reverts to holiness, the kosher act is still. The kosher act that you're able to uplift is something that you always have to be focused on. When it comes to klipas noga, you have to. When it comes to this klipa, irredeemable klipas, don't go there, but that's not really from you. Okay. Now, here comes the question of what happens, this klipa, I love how he calls it, the klipa detoxification. So like we're all into like getting rid of our body, like toxins, gut health, like all these things, right? So what if you have klipas inside you? Like, do you eat blueberries? Like, do you eat, I don't know, what else do we do for gut health? I should really learn about this because what? Apple cider, right? What cleans you out? What detoxes you from klipas that have built on lemon water? I know, I've been really trying to push up my coffee in the morning, but like I can't get to the lemon water yet. Like that, no. Okay, so what happens? So are there long-term repercussions for like having received or like filled your body with these irredeemable klipas or even, like you temporarily filled yourself with irredeemable klipas, right? And you want to know what to do. So how do we detox? How do we clean ourselves out from this? So the way that he says is that v'gam acher kach hershimu mimenu nishar davuk baguf. Davuk is like devek, which is like glue. So it's like glue. It's like guk. It's like lined inside of your intestines. Okay. So after the klipa, you've experienced this thing, and now you want to bring it back to holiness. But you have these 3 impure klipas within inside of you. You're just like walking around, carrying around this like muck, and you don't know how to get rid of it. So how do we do it? So therefore, the body. It basically, what you did is you took your body, which is like a vessel for Hashem, and you now made it a vessel for the Sitra Achra. I think that a very important thing to remember is that like the imagery that I have in my head is like you put on clothing of the bad guy. You know, like between Haman and Baruch Mordechai and Haman. Like, you know that idea of like who's who? That's what it is. It's like I am Mordechai, I know what it is, but for 1 second my body became filled with Haman, and it's like I need to expunge it. I need to get rid of it. So now that my body is became like a merkava and a lavush and clothing for the other side, how do I get rid of? It actually says the way that he described it, Shei's was like it's like fat deposits that are within you. Okay, so now this is a very deep concept in Yiddishkeit is burial. Okay, right? A Jewish burial. I think like one of the big things that we're having with like the hostages, right, is like bringing back the bodies, being able to bury them, proper Jewish burial. I don't know what state they're in, but we know that there's something very, very holy about burying a dead body. And we don't burn and we don't cremate, but we do a tahara. And I'm not sure all the details of the tahara, and I'm not going to go into it now either, but something that happens when they take the body to the mikvah and they clean the body, the insides of the inside of it comes out. Whatever was glued in, brings it, he then goes in like clean. Okay. Now, he starts to say, well, are we scared about my tire? What? Is it something that you do? Do you do it?
She does it.
Oh, you do it. You don't?
I went to the training.
Oh, you went to the training, right?
Does it, no?
Yeah, my mother did it for years.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a very, very big stress. Yeah, to be able to do it. I know. I don't fully understand it when he talks about boots and like whatever stuff. And like, you know, yeah, it's like definitely like that. Okay, so now it says, according to Jewish tradition. Right. After a person is nifter, right, his soul returns to the body. His soul then comes back to the body, and it says that the 4 angels come and they beat, I don't know what this means, they beat him until the klipa has been broken and removed from the soul. And this is called chibot hakever, literally beating within the grave, as described, and whatever, he brings it down where it's described. That basically, and they say that those that are buried in Eretz Yisrael, and this is something like I'm really trying to do now. I don't know if you know this, her brother-in-law is arranging, they have like more spots now in Har HaZeisim, they like cleared away. You hear about this? Yeah, there's like a whole group of people are doing it. I'm like, oh my gosh, I need to get it. My kids are like, that is so creepy. I'm like, no, you want to be buried in Eretz Yisrael because you're not going to have to deal with this concept. You'll be spared of Chibot HaKever because, we always said when we were kids, we were told like, everybody else is going to have to roll, right? But there's this idea when you're buried in Eretz Yisrael, there's something else that happens within your body that you're not going to have to experience this painful thing. So let's all be buried in Eretz Yisrael, but you know what? None of us are going to be buried. We're all going to be in Eretz Yisrael very soon. Okay. Amen. Then he says that even a person, by the way, who, the only way that a person can escape this concept of like cleansing before is if they never, ever, ever, ever done anything wrong, right? And we have this with people. There are some big tzaddikim and big people who've never did anything wrong in their life. And he brings down an example here of Rabbeinu HaKadosh, of Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi, who even he who was very, very wealthy, which, by the way, you could be like, he didn't derive any pleasure in this world. You could think, okay, somebody who doesn't have a lot of money and who sleeps on straw and, lives a very posh, simple life. Of course, he's not going to deal with the pleasures of the world. But no, even Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi, who was very, very wealthy and had a lot of pleasures in this world, and literally describes his table, like what he had. His table always had lettuce.
Checked.
Checked lettuce, by the way. A sign that you're rich is you have checked lettuce, okay? I wonder if they checked their lettuces. But he had radishes and cucumbers, and they were never absent in his house. Those were like staples, and that was like the food that they had that show that he was. So even he was a person who had money and who had pleasures and who had everything that he could have had. He did not derive any pleasure in this world for himself. Everything he did was uplifted for Hashem. So he's an example of a person who doesn't have to experience this. But most of us experience pleasure from this world, and it is something that we do have to do, that we will go through. Okay, now the Tanya starts to go on to another concept of something that is permitted by in Yiddishkeit, but it's something that still requires cleansing. Okay? So now what we're saying is that there's an idea of things that are okay here, things that are pariv, things that are neutral, things that we uplift. And things that we can derive pleasure from. Hashem tells us. Hashem then tells us there are certain things that you can't derive pleasure from. But then, now that we're on the topic of post-death and maybe slightly we'll touch Gehenna, we're going to talk a little bit about things that we're going to have to take care of in the next world. Okay? In our journey to the next world, we're not going to have to experience this. But let's say people were just talking, just nonsense talk. Just silly, wasteful talk. I don't know if you have those conversations with people. I've also changed my relationships over time. I weeded it out, and I'm now all my friends are just my chavrusas. But those random idle conversations that just are about shaitels and recipes and not necessarily. I don't know. I'm trying to think what else we discussed. That's not. Even though everything, yes, we can uplift everything. But when you're spending your speech and you could be learning Torah and you're very active and your mind is capable of learning Torah. By the way, that's a precursor also. If your mind is very capable of learning Torah and you're filling your mind with silly, wasteful things, that's something that we're going to have to clean out in the next world. Okay? That's something that we don't want to, we don't like to talk about this thing, but we'll do it very shortly and very briefly. I feel like I'm giving so many introductions for it because I'm I don't fully understand this because my version of Gehenna when I was a kid was you're going to sit in a football field and you are going to watch an entire video of your life. Anybody else ever have that? That's what they described it? Yeah. What? That's how they teach it to us. So actually, it's not crazy far off, but according to the Baal Tanya, he says, what is it? The way that I'll say it in Hebrew first and then we'll explain. It says, let's say you are a good person, you spent your time in idle talk. You spent your time eating a little too much. You wasting time, right? Okay? What's going to happen? It says, Al Yedei Gilgula B'Kaf Hakela. Kaf Hakela is the word, is the way that he describes it here is the hollow of a sling, like a slingshot, okay? Gehenna is a slingshot. Al Yedei Gilgula B'Kaf Hakela, K'mo shekasav b'Zohar, and he brings down from the Zohar. So he says that what is going to happen, how is this cleansing going to happen in the next world? It's going to be achieved through the soul being thrown in a kafkela, in a slingshot. I know, right? okay? Like funny description. Like slingshot, like I think like David Melech, Goliath, like shooting him, right? What's a slingshot? Sometimes I mix it up slingshots with bow and arrows. However far back you go, that's how far it goes. So let's try to imagine.
Till 12 months.
Till 12 months. Everybody, only 11 months, okay? Which is pretty short time. I feel like this year went by very fast. And also, we don't know exactly what that means. The longest someone ever has spent in this slingshot is 11 months, okay? And that, we'll just call it like kafakela. I feel like it sounds like a little bit nicer, like something that maybe we don't fully understand, because I don't really understand. But an example, one of the ways that Chase Cap explained it is that, let's say like the concept of going up into Shemayim and learning is you're going to be up there in Beis Medrash Mala, we're going to be learning, we're going to be discussing Elokos, we're going to be talking about Hashem, everything's going to be amazing. What is this slingshot? It's going to be like a record that's playing in the back of your ear. If you ever have like one earpod in your ear and you're actually having a conversation with somebody, do you ever have this? It's so bad. And you're like, I'm going to call, and then you're like, forget it, let me just let this person continue, and then you're still talking. That's kind of what it's going to be like. All the idle chatter, and you're going to be like, what's that voice? I'm trying to learn. What's that chatter? It's going to be your recording over and over. Like, so I got the least top sheet on, then we cut it, and this and that. Like, it's going to be that back and forth. I know it's very scary, but it's not really so scary because, by the way,
scary because we were told that someone could burn in hell forever.
Right. So it's not so scary, but it is
better.
right.
You all had that for 11 months.
11 months. Of you like
The worst. That's the worst.
That's the worst. That's the worst. That's what it is.
You're not the worst.
Your own voice. By the way, your own voice is probably the cringiest part. Like when I hear myself on recording, I'm like, I do not
You know,
sound like
I
that.
think voice recording is starting to like
Get a little better?
It's like no, it's like you're getting used to it.
We're getting
Yes.
ready for our help.
Yes. Do you ever do that? Everybody says they want that voice note, and then do you not listen back to it?
For years, I couldn't listen to my voice, so I couldn't leave voice notes. Now I'm getting myself used to hearing my voice.
Used to your voice.
Just leave the voice on and leave it. Would you all listen to it?
You never listen to it? I always do. I always go back to it. I'm like, let me hear how I sounded. No, you don't. Right? So it's uncomfortable. You always do, right?
There's two groups of people. People who listen to their voices.
There are two types of people. Are you the type of person who listens to it or just
Must
sends it?
be in the middle.
Do you listen on one time, 1.5, or 2 times, right? There are those people I want to do it on 3. Like, you know. But, because it's just like they're just basically having a conversation. I happen to be on the phone, but it's like going for hours, right? It's so much fun. So that's really, so the scariest thing, it's going to be kafakela. It's going to be your voice playing in the background. And by the way, it's something that you can very quickly change. Like, if you for 1 second feel like you're talking narishkeit, like, whatever, I don't mean to say shekels, because shekels are very important. But shekels are super important. And like
celebrity news.
Celebrity news, yeah, exactly, right? Just like, that's unnecessary, right? Meghan Markle.
I mean, it could be important also.
It could, and you can elevate it. And by the way, I always say, like, I feel like I mean, I don't know, maybe not, but like I work in the city and I work with girls who are not religious, and I'm like, I need to be in the know. I need to be up to date.
Yeah.
Baby Ranger, whatever it is, like something you have to have, and maybe that's what it is. But I believe that all that stuff can be uplifted and all klipas nova as long as it's permissible. But yeah, idle talk, and especially if you're a person who has the capacity to be able to learn, it's Bittul Torah. And it was like, Bittul Torah is about men, not much about us. No, it is. It's like, you have the capacity to learn, to teach. And by the way, you're all shluchim now, and like, you all should be going out there. Leia's definitely doing it. Did a very good job. She gets a shout out today. I met somebody today, and I was like, and my friend's like, oh, she teaches Tanya, and she's like, Leia Geraslos learns Tanya, and I'm like, that's it. Like, it really is. It was like, and she's like, and it changed her life. So I said last week, it's funny, I was talking to Sarah and to Paloma, and I was like, we need to get Yaakov in, we need to do like Tanya reviews, like how Tanya has changed your life, and it's true. But here's one of the things, you find yourself in like idle chatter, like, I don't know about you guys, but like in my office, like first 45 minutes is just like, I heard Gourmet Glad and Woodmere's closing. Did anybody, like, I don't think so. I'm like, you see, I'm like, just shh, like quiet. Right? Like, so I stick my earpods in, but I'm already, like, I learned this 2 days ago, and I'm already like, okay, we all do. We have the capacity to learn. It's Bittul Torah. Move on. Weiter. Remember, think about it. It's going to have to be, it's going to be kafakela. It's going to be 1 day less
I think the fact
of
that
it.
we know this now helps. Like, I personally never knew this. Like,
Right? I never knew. It's funny. Sometimes like it's like so on trend to be like going to Sharon and like learning. And I'm like, first of all, I always say your line, Mary, because we have the capacity to learn now. We're not like shechting chickens and doing laundry down by the ocean. You know, like we have the capacity to learn, and it is on trend to be learning. And then it's an amazing thing that we have, and keep it going, because like the more you do it, the less.
Then there's like, oh, you go to Tanya because like, oh, that's like the thing to do now. I was like, no,
It changes your life.
It changes you. I know. It's crazy, right? It really is. It is. So this is one of it. So Bittul Torah, especially for somebody who has it. And then it says even more. It says Aval ledvarim asurim kamo leitzanas v'lashon hara. So what about? So that's idle chatter. Fine. Celebrity news, People Magazine. But what about with forbidden discussions? What about leitzanas? What about making fun of somebody? What about mockery? What about lashon hara? Actually talking bad about somebody. Those are coming from the 3 irredeemable klipas. What happens to that? For that, there's real Gehenna. Okay? So Kafakela is like, okay, like I'm just having a time, I'm going to work on it. But what's real Gehenna? So here he says like this. V'chein, misha efshar lo la'asot b'Torah. Somebody who, the same is true for somebody who's able to really immerse themselves with Torah. V'osek b'dvarim b'telim. And then chooses to be immersed in like worthless discussions. What is it? Kafakela alone really can't help you. And you need to be cleansed. And how are you going to be cleansed? Okay, I hope I say this right. Dun, dun, dun. I know, right? And then it's like the screen goes dark, right? No, it's not. It actually says, Rak ha'onshem chamurim. I feel like I'm making such a big deal out of it, and I should have just like done this little, like quietly, right?
And it'll be like last week.
Right? Sorry, we got cut off. Okay, so but this is a sit. Your neshama needs to help because you're neglecting Torah. So what happens? So there's the general punishment of, okay, you get punished for not doing the things that you do, and then there's Gehenim, and it says the Gehenim shall sheleg, that there's a Gehenim of snow. Okay, so what's a Gehenim of snow? So he's basically said it's like Mida Keneged Mida. When you do something with ice coldness, you go into the Gehenim of snow. When you do something with fiery, passionate love, even though it's not allowed, you go to the fiery hell, right? So it's basically Mida Keneged Mida. You act in a certain way, you always tell our kids like this. You know, like somebody always says, like, hurt people. Like somebody who's hurt, they're going to do it back, right? Angry people, right, become even angrier or cause that. That's what happens. It's a mida keneged mida. You act a certain way, you separate from Hashem for a little bit, you're going to experience that in that way. Now, it's saying therefore in the afterlife, all these things that we did wrong are cleansed either by a hot Gehenim of fire, and neglected commandments are served in a Gehenim of snow. Okay?
Physical, like.
Is it?
Because we're not physical beings there.
I don't know. I definitely don't know. Does anybody here know? Anybody know? No. There's no way for us to comprehend it.
That's
Right.
the most we can comprehend.
This is the most we can comprehend. What?
It's true. Elsa was in hell.
Elsa. Elsa was in a palace of snow. Yeah. She was
A frozen person.
She was frozen.
Alone.
She was alone.
What happens
This is Momish Disney princesses. We're bringing it back from last week.
So
what happens if you-
still end up like, do we still go back to like all that stuff?
So I believe that
Happens if you
if,
do
No,
tshuva.
if you do a full tshuva,
then you don't have to
there's
do this.
nothing.
And that's why we preface this with Tshuva Me'ava. Tshuva Me'ava is going back to all those places where you were cold and you were callous and you didn't care and you made mistakes and you're like, oh my gosh, all I wanted to do was spend my whole life with Hashem. I can't believe I did this. That Tshuva Me'ava will spare you from flinging back and forth and going to visit Elsa. Like, it's not going to happen. Like, we'll just call it that, right? Okay, right? Well,
That's why Yom Kippur is my favorite day.
Yom Kippur is a
It's
favorite
the
day.
highlight of the whole year. Like, you think I'm crazy, but it is.
It
It's like,
is. You
when
have
do you
the-
ever get like a fresh start? Ever. Right.
Right. That's what it is. It's a fresh start. Technically every day, right.
You can, but there's extra
No, but like Yom
levels.
Kippur is
like
that
it's a full
real full body
Full
experience.
cleansing,
Yes.
right? It's a full body experience. And like,
Yeah.
by the way, when we go through a Shamnu Baganu, imagine you go through Dibartu Dofi, and I did all these things. Lashon Hara, right? I know.
Oh my god.
I definitely have trauma with this. Like as a kid, almost like I was a little kid before I knew like when to do. Now I'm just like smacking myself the whole time, like you know. But the truth is, going every time you say that thing that you did wrong, go back to that place where you did it, and then uplift it with Tshuva Me'ava. Go back to that place and uplift it and say, this is not what I wanted to do. And use it. And remember, we said, if you did something wrong, you can use it as a trampoline to shoot you forward. Use it as a slingshot to get you even closer. Remember, the further you pull back, the further you have gone, the further you're going to go forward. And that's really like the same thing as a bow and arrow. That's tefillah. That's the idea of like the deeper you go, the further you can. And you went very far. You made mistakes. So do it now so we don't have to worry about this. It should just be theoretical. Okay, then it actually talks about and I like this also because I remember always thinking like and this is something interesting. Like I do work with Chabad schools, and I'll put it out there. I do work in schools, and one of the things is they really don't teach English till a certain age. And I was always like fascinated by that. I was always like, well, for us on our side, it's always like, well, I can't give you services because you don't learn English, so you don't. And I was always like, what does that mean? You don't learn English till your third grade, till fifth grade, till this, whatever. The schools have now adapted, but there was a time where there wasn't. Correct me if I'm wrong. Like,
No, you're very right.
there's like no, and I remember like doing IQ tests on like a very sweet young Chabad kid, and I showed him an animal of a beer, and he had no idea what it was. Like they don't know non-kosher animals, and he was young, and I was like, this was like a very this was like a deep one, but I was like, wow, like 1 second, and I always thought of it like this is so bizarre. We live in 2024, but no, it's not. It's not true. Even secular wisdom, even not let's say like math, science, philosophy. I always feel like philosophy might be like a good example, right? Because that could always like take you astray. It was always like Aristotle, right? Even philosophy is worse. Philosophy, learning not secular concepts is worse than idle speech. Idle speech, like just random, like talking about, let's say like, Meghan Markle and whatever. I don't know. She's always on my mind. I don't know why. I'm just like, that's like the epitome of like tabloid, right? Like whatever, Kate Middleton. The epitome of tabloid is that. So with that, there is a possibility of like klipas noga, of like using it for something to connect to people. Like I said, like I want to be in the know so that I can bring, that's why when I learn with people, it sounds right. That idle speech is bad, but philosophy sometimes is even worse. Why? Because idle speech really just affects your emotions. Oh, I'm so sad for Kate Middleton. I am. I down for her. I don't know what her tone name is, but I pray for her, right? So I have her in my mind. So that might be idle, but that really just affects my emotions. When you're learning not Jewish topics, secular topics, it affects your Chachma Bina Das. It really does. It affects your intellect because you are like tempting your intellect with something that maybe is not like in line with Hashem. Obviously it is because Hashem created it. And by the way, the biggest takeaway from this is that like I always say, like my father was, unless he connects to Elokus, right? Like I always was like, my father was a doctor and everything that he learned and all the secular things that he was learning was all for his practice. Everything to uplift him. The Ramban and the Rambam were both doctors. And they studied this. They went to med school. So you're like, oh, wait, secular wisdom, we can't do that. No, because they saw the purpose of it. It says, like, I remember it was learning that they even, not only that they immersed themselves in secular studies. I remember learning that the Rambam wrote a math book. That, like, he actually, like, studied these things. And in those times, he was able to uplift it. So Stam secular Chachma is not necessarily something that you need to involve yourself in because, remember, it affects your head space. Okay? And then idle talk is something that you can align with, like klipas noga, but it's not necessarily very good for you. It's not something that we want to do.
But aren't we supposed to live in this world?
So yes. So right, I was like waiting for somebody to say that. So like,
oh, if they don't know what a bear is, like.
it's a little tricky. Right. That was obviously like a very extreme example. Right. But there's definitely like a timtum. Like I like that word. Like I'm gonna end the parak here, but I'll answer this question. That was like it's too much. Was that too much of an example? I don't know. That's how
I work at a
I
lot of school, and they just like said like you don't if you're giving out stickers, whatever, don't give like the non-kosher animals, whatever. When you
What age are you talking about?
For sure, preschool.
Like really?
I mean, I taught I'm an OT, so I was doing like all middle school also.
Right.
But for sure, like the principal told me that, and like on their walls, they happens to be. I remember asking someone, it was camels. But Parashas Lachakos. Like, why is there camels? I'm not allowed to give out camels. Like instead of giving out.
Rivka fed the camels, right?
I know.
So definitely when you're just doing it stam for like academia. That's really what we're talking about. When we're talking about connecting it, obviously, to Hashem and aligning it to Hashem.
Use that knowledge for.
Interesting. True.
You could use
At the end of the day,
for.
if you connect it to Elokus, then it's not a waste of time.
But maybe you're not now. But later
But that's
on.
your job that you're supposed that's
That your job is that even in your day job, connect it to Hashem. Even you went to college, you went to school, you're using it, you're working it, connect it to Hashem.
Can I give an example of that?
Yeah.
Even just like, everyone's looking.
Yeah.
I went to nursing school and I literally thought it was the most beautiful thing. I think biology is fascinating and beautiful and wonderful. But the only reason why I even thought it was so like fascinating and wonderful is it's so nerdy. But like I had a 7th grade teacher who taught it. And
Mrs. Spilkey?
Yes! Okay, so you know how she said
Yeah, I mean Hashem is infinite wisdom. My daughter's here all day. She talk about Mrs. Spooky.
So I love her with my whole heart, like with my whole fist. I even taught science after.
That is
for like
crazy.
5
As you were
years.
saying it, I'm like in my head, I'm like
No,
Mrs.
it has to
Spooky,
be
and you're
Mrs.
like,
Spooky, because
that's
even as I
crazy.
taught it, I was like, and Hashem is your body, it's your novice. And like I remember in college, like I was talking to someone, and he was saying yeah, like science is proof that God doesn't exist. I'm like, are you kidding me? Science
Like you
is
cannot be in a
proof
medical
that God
field and not see Hashem, right? Like it's
right,
true.
but like for him, it was like, look how many proofs, and I'm like, you
Right.
don't even know, like you don't even know.
Right.
But like it was learning science was like such a kiddush Hashem just because of the way she taught it, and like learning it was like Hashem.
Right.
You
I know, it really
like,
is. It really is. So
can't
I
believe
want
how
to like
much it's
wrap up like these 8 prakim because these 8 prakim are like the foundation. Remember, like in the beginning, we were talking about 1 through 8, 1 through 8. So if we were to wrap up, let's say 1 through 8, because after this, we're going to start moving on to like more theoretical concepts. This is your lexicon. We now have, we know that we're going into Yechidus with the Rebbe. We know that we have 2 neshamas. We know that Nefesh HaBahamas, Nefesh HaLokis. We're saying it like we know it. This is it. This vocabulary that we have now of klipas and sitra achra and spheros and kohos and levushim and trying to remember what other words we had, levushim and like food, soul food. All of this becomes your vocabulary now. This becomes your vernacular. This becomes the way that you can now see the world. This is like the glasses that we have. We now have the foundations to be able to like move forward into Tanya. So if you were to break up Tanya, she has the map of Tanya. This is the first 8 classes are your lexicon. These are the words that we need to know. And now we're going to start to use it in our regular day life. But really, like, I can't stress this enough, how you really are shluchim. Like, you really now have this information, you use it, it changes your life. The second it changes your life, you can flip it and change another person's life. Flip it. Remember, klipas, irredeemable klipas, not redeemable klipas. Okay, so we're going to end here. I'll take your questions after, and thank you all for joining.